Hello, welcome back to Kim Reads as we continue with Wicked. She took a little ale in a pitkin, left the rest for him. He told her the barest outline of things. His wife Samira, the childhood bride grown up and grown fecund, their 3 children. The old office of Public Waterworks headquarters at Kiamako, which by ambush and occupation his father had converted to a chieftaincy tribal stronghold back in the time of the Ozma regiment. The dizzying schizoid life of every year from the 1,000-year grasslands in the spring and summer, where the clan hunted and fested, to a more settled autumn and winter at Kiamako. An Arjiki prince has business interests here in the Emerald City, said Elphaba. If it were banking, you'd be in shits. This business of this city is military, my old friend. What are you up to? You've heard enough from me, he said. I can play coy and deceptive, even if it's all pretend and no dark secrets to speak of. He guessed the quiet business of trade agreements would not hold his friend, but was embarrassed his affairs weren't more audacious or thrilling. But I've gone on. What of you, Elfie? She wouldn't say anything for a few minutes. She unrolled some dried sausages and some graying bread and found a couple of oranges and a lemon and put them in unceremoniously on the table. In the mothy atmosphere, she looked like a shadow than a person. Her green skin seemed oddly soft, like spring leaves at their tenderest, and beaten like copper. He had unprecedented urge to grab her wrists and make her stop moving about. If not to make her talk, at least to keep her still so he could look at her. Eat the stuff, she said at last. I'm not hungry. You can eat it. Go on. Tell me something, he begged. You left us at Shiz. You disappeared like a morning fog. Why, where to, and what then? How poetic you are, she said. I've had a notion that poetry is the highest form of self-deception. Don't change the subject. She was agitated. Her fingers twitched. She called for a cat, and then irritated and sent it flying off her lap. Finally, she said, "Oh well, this much then. But you're never to come here again. I don't want to have to find a new place. This is too good for me. Don't you promise?" "Do you promise?" "I will agree to consider promising. That's all. How can I promise any more than that? I don't know a thing yet." She said hurriedly, "Well, I was fed up with Shiz. The death of Dr. Dillman vexed me, and everyone grieved and nobody cared. Not really. It wasn't the right place for me anyway. All those silly girls. Although I like Glinda well enough. How is she, anyway? I'm not in touch. I keep expecting her to run at some palace reception or another. I hear through the grapevine that she married a Paolo's baronet." Elphaba looked annoyed and her back stiffened. Only a baronet? Not a baron or a viscount, at least? What a disappointment. Her early promise was to never pan out. Then, meant as a joke, her remark was stiff and unfunny. Is she a mother? I don't know. I'm asking the questions now, remember? Yes, but palace reception, she said. Are you in cahoots with our glorious wizard? I hear he's mostly gone reclusive. I've never met him, Fiyero said. He shows up at the opera and listens behind a portable screen. At his own formal dinners, he dines apart in an adjoining chamber behind a carved marble grill. I've seen a profile of a stately man walking along a promenade. Even if that's the wizard, that's all I've met of him. But you, why did you cut us all off? I love you too much to keep in touch. What does that mean? Don't ask me, she said, thrashing a bit, her arms like oars rowing in blue summer evening lightness. Yes, I am asking. Have you ever lived here since? For 5 years? Do you study? Do you work? He rubbed his bare forearms as he tried to guess about her. What would she be up to? Are you associated with the Animal Relief League or one of those defiant little humanitarian organizations? I've never used the word humanist or humanitarian, as it seems to me that to be human is to be capable of the most heinous crimes in nature. You're evading again. That's my job, she said. That's a clue for you, dear Fiyero. Amplify. I went underground, she said softly, and I'm still underground. You're the first to crack my anonymity since I said goodbye to Glinda 5 years ago. So you know why I can't say any more, or why you can't see me again. For all I know, you will turn me into the Gale Force. Ha, those martinets, you think very little of me if you think I... How do I know? How could I know? She twisted her fingers together like a puzzle of green sticks. They march in those boots all over the poor and weak. They terrify households at 3 a.m. and drag away dissenters, and break up printing presses with their axes, and hold mock trials for treason at midnight and executions at dawn. They rake over every quarter of this beautiful false city. They harvest a crop of victims on a monthly basis. It's a government of terror. They could be massing on the street right now. Never having yet followed me, they may have followed you. You're not as hard to follow as you think, he told her. You're good, but not that good. I could teach you a few things. I bet you could, she said, but you won't, for we won't meet again. It's too dangerous, as well, for you as well as me. That's what I mean when I say I love you all too much to keep in touch. Do you think the Gale Force is above torturing friends and family to get at sensitive information? You've got a wife and children, and I'm merely an old college friend you ran into once. Clever you followed me. Never again, do you hear? I will move if I find you're trailing me. I can take up right now and be away in 30 seconds. It's my training. Don't do this to me, he said. We're old friends, she said, but we're not especially good friends. Don't turn this into a sentimental rendezvous. It's nice to see you again, but I don't want to see you again. Take care of yourself and beware high connections with bastards, because when the revolution comes, there won't be mercy for toady ass lickers. At what? 23 years old? You're playing the Lady Rebel, he said. It's not becoming. It's unbecoming, she agreed. A perfect word for my new life. Unbecoming. I, who have always been unbecoming, and unbecoming, mean un. Though I point out you is the same age as I am prancing about as a prince. But have you eaten, though? We have to say goodbye now. We don't, he said firmly. He wanted to take her hands in his. He didn't remember that he had ever touched her before. He corrected himself. He knew he never had. It's almost as if she could read his mind. You know who you are, she said, but you don't know who I am. You can't. I mean you can't, and you can't. It's not allowed for one, and you're not capable of the other. Godspeed, if they use that phrase in the Vinkus. It's not a curse. Godspeed, Fiyero. She handed him his applique and held out her hand to shake his. He grabbed her hand and looked up in her face, with just for a second had fallen upon. When he saw there had been made chilling a hot flash and dizzying simultaneously with the shape and scale of its need. What do you hear of Bach? She asked next time they met. You just won't answer me anything about yourself, will you? He said. He was lounging on his feet by her table. Why do you finally agree to let me come back if you keep yourself locked up like a prisoner? I rather liked Bach, that's all. She grinned. I let you come back so I could pump you for news of him and of others. He told her what he knew. Bach had married Miss Milla. Of all surprising turns, she had been dragged out to Nest Hardings, and she hated it. She kept trying suicide. His letters sent at Lurleen most every year are hysterical. They annotate her failed attempts at killing herself like some sort of annual report. It makes me wonder, in the same circumstances, what my mother must have gone through, said Elphaba. The privileged childhood in the big home of the ascendancy, the rude shock of hard life out there in the nowhere land. In Mama's case, from coal-wing grounds to rush margins, then the quaddling lowlands. It's actually a penance of the most severe sort. Like mother, like daughter, said Fiyero. Have you ever let a certain amount of privilege of yourself to live here like a snail, hidden in private? I remember the first time I saw you, she said, shaking drops of vinegar over the roots and vegetables she was preparing for supper. It was like the lecture shawl of what's-his-name? Dr. Nicodick, said Fiyero. He blushed. You have those beautiful markings on your face. I've never seen such before. Do you plan that entrance to win your way into our hearts? On my honor, I could not have done anything else. I would have. I was both mortified and terrified. Do you know, I thought those enchanted antlers were going to kill me? It was prancing Crope and Flibberty Tibet who saved me. Crope and Tibet. Tibet and Crope. I'd forgotten all about them. How were they? Tibet was never the same after the escapade at the Philosophy Club. Crope, I think, entered an arts auction house and still flits around with a theatrical set. I see him from time to time at occasions. We don't speak. My, you're disapproving, she laughed. Of course, being as pertinent as the next creature, I was wondering what the Philosophy Club had turned out to be like. You know, in another life, I'd like to see them all again. And Glinda, dear Glinda, and even nasty Averick. What of him? Averick I do speak to. He's the most of the year installed of the Margravate, but he has a house at Shiz. When in the Emerald City, we stay at the same club. Is he still a smug bore? My, you're disapproving now. I suppose I am. They ate their dinner. Fiyero waited for her to ask more about his family, but it was their respective families they were keeping from each other. Apparently, his Vinca's wife and children, her circle of agitators and insurrectionists. The next time he came, though, he thought he must wear a shirt open at the neck so he could see the pattern of blue diamonds on his face and continue on broken down his chest, since he seemed to like that. Surely you don't spend the entire autumn season here in the Emerald City, she asked one evening when the cold was drawing in. I've sent the word to Samira that business is keeping here indefinitely. She doesn't care. How could she care? Plucked out of a filthy caravansary and married as a small child to an Argentine prince. Her family wasn't stupid. She got food, servants, and the stone walls of Kiamiko for defense against other tribes. She's gotten a little fat after her third child. She doesn't really notice whether I'm home or not. Well, she has 5 sisters, and they all moved in. I married a harem. No. Elphaba sounded intrigued and a little embarrassed at the idea. You're right. No, not really. Sarah Mina has proposed once or twice that her younger sisters could happily occupy my energies at nighttime. Once you pass over the Great Kells, the taboo against such an exercise isn't as strong as it seems to be in the rest of Oz, so stop looking so shocked. I can't help it. Did you do it? Did I do it? He was teasing her. Did you sleep with your sister-in-law? No, he said. Not out of lofty moral standards or a lack of interest either. It's just that Sarima is a shrewd wife, and everything in marriage is a campaign. I would have been enthralled even more than I am. Such a bad thing? You're not married, you know. Yes, a bad thing. I am married, she said, just not to a man. He raised his eyebrow. She put her hands to her face. He'd never seen her look like that. Her words had shocked herself. She had turned her head away for an instant, cleared her throat, and blew her nose. Oh, damn tears! They burned like fire! She cried suddenly in a fury and ran for an old blanket to dab her eyes where the salty wetness could run down on her cheeks. She stood bent over like an old woman, one arm at the counter, the blanket falling from her face to the floor. Elfie, Elfie, he said, horrified, and lurched after her, put his arms around her, and the blanket hugged between them, chin to ankles. But he seemed to burst into the flame itself, or roses, or a fountain of champagne and incense. Odd how the richest images bloomed in the mind when the body itself was most alert. No, she cried. No. I'm not a harem. I'm not a woman. I'm not a person. No. But when her arms wheeled of their own accord, like windmill snails, like those magic antlers, not to kill him, but to pin him with love to mount him against the wall. Malky, with a rare display of discretion, climbed the windowsill and looked away from them. And I'm going to stop there. Thanks for listening.